Hello, I'm George White, and this is What's Left. Welcome to today's show, and I'd like to introduce my co-hosts, Renee Barnett.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
And Sean Halsall.
Hi, everyone. How you doing?
You all right?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. So what's going on in the USA, Renee, at the moment?
You're really going to start with me? Okay. Oh, my goodness. Well, I have a very, very urgent announcement. We still have no Speaker of the House in the United States. And now they've gone home for the weekend, and they're going to think about it. They're going to cool down, and they're going to come back, and they're going to do the same thing again. And that's get into another big fight and still not elect a speaker. It would be funny, except the business of the country is not getting done without a speaker. There can be no laws passed, nothing done without a Speaker of the House. Of course, we've got another shutdown looming because we only got a 45-day extension, which is, now been a week or two ago. So we're heading into like a month's time toward another government shutdown unless they can pass the budget, and they're not even really working on it, and they can't because they have no speaker. So aside from that, we've still got the holdups of our military appointments and promotions that are affecting hundreds of military families who are really being put in hardship by having been put in limbo. Some of them have already sold their homes to move to their next destination, and they can't because the appointments can't be made because of one Republican Senator, Tommy Tuberville, who has absolutely no clue about anything about the military. He never served in the military. He thinks he's an expert. He was complaining because on some mission, someone read a poem to the crew, to the group, and he claims that that's proof that our military is too woke. They shouldn't be reading poetry. And then it was pointed out all these times through history, these great generals had done exactly the same thing. Our biggest heroes in the United States and elsewhere, because I know Churchill was mentioned. It's idiotic and it's crazy, but it's causing a whole lot of problems for the country, not to mention our image around the world.
Do you think this is sort of setting the stage for the next elections over there, Renee? Sort of brinkmanship and trying to, if we can't get our way, we'll shut it down to try and leverage the next election?
Well, someone on one of the news programs last night pointed out that, there's a whole thing of it. In fact, it was a teacher that was talking about how, no one wants to accept the results of a contest when they lose. And then, that used to be the thing. We taught good sportsmanship. The term sore loser was a real insult. You didn't want to be called a sore loser. It was always the thing to do, to walk across the field and shake hands with the other team and congratulate them, that sort of thing. And how the Republicans can't accept the results of any election, any decision. And when you think about it, accepting decisions, regardless of whether it was what you voted for, But if it was what the majority voted for, that is democracy. Being able to accept the results of a free and fair contest. That's what democracy is all about. So they're actually, working against democracy. And when you see the teachers in the United States leaving their jobs in droves, not just because of the banning of the books, which is hideously horrible, and the banning of language, because God forbid they should slip up and say something about slavery or about same-sex marriage, or acknowledge even a kid in their class that has two dads or two moms. They can get fired for that. But that's not even the reason they're leaving. They're leaving because the kids are absolutely not taught anymore to respect teachers and authority of any kind, and and they act terrible. And then when the teacher reports back to the parents get mad at the teachers, and nobody tells my kid what to do, and they threaten. And I know this because I've got teachers in my family, and if it's at the ball game and the coach takes their kid out, they get mad and go down on the field and threaten the coach, and it can be kind of scary. And it's also very frustrating. It's like, here you are, you're working this job. You've at least got a bachelor's degree. You might have a master's, or you could even have a doctorate. And yet you're not getting paid anywhere near the salary that you could go out into the world and collect if you weren't a teacher. But you've decided, and you've sort of been sold the bill of goods that being a teacher is good for the country, and you're training the future. But teachers are now saying, we're not training the future. They're not allowing us to be, to teach them anything.
Do you think part of that as well is sort of a more wider movement of devaluing education and devaluing knowledge and stuff like that? There's sort of a I don't want to hear from the experts thing that's filtered through to education.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Ever since Donald Trump said, I love the uneducated, that's been kind of a clue.
I think without it sort of being conscious though as well, I think there is this, we want to venerate people like, I don't know, Jeff Bezos, and we want to venerate people like Elon Musk, as if this this aspiration to be a billionaire is the thing to be after, and that it's all done by this, I don't know, this sort of celebrity status rather than, the profferation of knowledge, which is the true basis of a great country, isn't it?
Right, and a great person too.
I just wanted to go back, Renee, to when you were saying about the sort of deadlock that happens within the system there, and I was sort of thinking about it earlier on about how in the UK, where if we had a similar deadlock, the most similar thing would be a budget vote, but the budget, if the budget didn't pass, then there would be a period of time for the government to come back with a fresh budget, one to put to the House of Commons again. And if it didn't pass again, it would automatically leave the Prime Minister in a place that they had to call an election. So that one way or another, the deadlock would unlock. Either we do pass a budget, or we seek a new mandate from the electorate to unlock it that way around. Whereas it seems in the US system, there's no mechanism to unlock it.
Right. So you're saying that it's put to the people then, the budget, or
not the budget, that it would just be a fresh general election.
Oh, so the leadership would be put up for election.
Every MP would be put back up for re-election.
That would make you pass a bill, wouldn't it? I mean, that's a great incentive to pass the budget. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's shocking that some people are still in Congress after things that they've done and aided and abetted and things like that. It's just, I can't believe we can't get rid of people.
And believe me, Renee, we're in the same boat over here in this country. Our government is no bastion of moral high ground.
I guess is that just the nature of the beast? I would hope not. I would hope that, you know, there are people out there that could provide good leadership, good, honest leadership, but you know, somehow they don't get elected as much because they don't have the power of the purse behind them generally, because generally the big money gets behind people that are not really for the people. They're for themselves.
I think with the sort of established the established routes to being elected, I think people have been through this filter, haven't they? They've been through a filter and then a filter and then a filter to get to the position of even being a candidate. So if you are sitting there as the candidate in some of these parties, it's because we've made sure that you're the right person to be there. From the party's view, not necessarily from the electorate's view, but
right. Yeah, I mean, we've just been hoodwinked so many times, and I believe I could say the same for the citizens of the United Kingdom. That whole Brexit thing was such a mess, and I believe that people didn't really, or a lot of people didn't really understand what they were voting for or what the consequences might be. And, you know, I doubt seriously if they would have agreed to put the country through that. What do you think?
My personal view is where the left certainly went wrong in Britain was we never told the left-wing narrative of what Brexit could have been. I don't necessarily think that would have made a difference to the end result. I think what it would have done is it wouldn't have allowed the right wing to completely capture the idea of a Brexit, and there would be different ideas and people would be thinking about different sorts of Brexit we could have had, which wouldn't have allowed the Tories to have had the hard right Brexit we ended up with. May have changed the results of the elections with some of these absolute lunatics who took the Tories over. And I think that sort of left-wing narrative, because it was a nonsense campaign, but on both sides there were lies told on both sides of that campaign.
Really?
The Remain and the Leave side. I vote Remain. But to be honest with me,
what turned it out to be false that the left was claiming?
I mean, the left weren't claiming anything. The actual left stayed out of it. It was sort of the centre, soft left side who got involved in the Remain side. I think for me, what was touted was the EU protects workers' rights. It's just demonstrably false. Every bit of anti-trade union legislation that hampers us now has come in since 1980. We're in the EU before then, and they didn't do much to slow that down. I don't know what your thoughts are, George.
Yeah, I think there's been more of a concentration on giving these individual rights to things like, paid holidays, individual rights to. I suppose one of the rights would be about the ability to join a trade union without legal recourse. But again, it's an individual right. It isn't a collective right of trade unions to be able to organise. It's the right of the individual not to be sacked for being a member of a trade union. So some of the rights that have come in, and they're all rights that I wouldn't advocate to get rid of, but they're all rights nevertheless that are focused around the individual rather than the collective, rather than groups of people, which is one of the, which is trade unions are one of those groupings.
What's the answer here?
I think that there needs to be space for these ideas to be debated. That's the problem the left have, sort of globally, because it's no different in the US, where actual left-wing ideas have no platform. So if you can't discuss these ideas openly, how do people hear them and agree with them and sort of come to their own conclusions through an educated view? And if we're keeping people in the dark, they're never going to be able to make an informed decision.
Yeah, again, I think, I'm sure probably there as well, but certainly here in the United States, the programming runs very, very deep, and it begins, almost at birth, but certainly when we enter school. And it's so subtle and so pervasive that, you don't notice it. You don't know it. It's been with you. You've been in it your whole life. So it feels like the natural position, the natural point of view. I think I've mentioned before, we used to get these little sort of newspapers for kids. They were called Weekly Reader. And there would be like news from around the world, what other kids were doing. And there was all this, stuff about, communist kids being propagandized, how they were, taught early on. And we would go like, oh my God, they're teaching kids this stuff. This is crazy. This is just awful. They should leave the kids alone. And at the same time, we were getting the same thing, but we didn't realize it. It's like, I feel like, and forgive me if I offend anybody, because I often do, I guess, but I feel like it's with a person who's grown up, like in a certain religion, and I was thinking, because I grew up in the Southern United States, and, it was the Bible Belt and evangelicals. It's just that, when you go out and you tell someone about your religion, or you try to proselytize to them or get them to come to the right side or whatever, you are doing it really thinking you're absolutely correct and right. And that, if you didn't do that, you would be remiss in, letting that person save their eternal soul. It'd be partially your fault. And it's just so ingrained. It's like to tell someone that, eating is wrong, breathing is wrong. This is, it to your very core, because it's been so ingrained. And that's what we're up against, probably in every country. People's lack of ability to view themselves and to really objectively look at, why do I believe what I believe? Is it really my belief, or is it something that's been, drilled into my head, pounded into my head, or just subtly absorbed by osmosis through my lifetime? Is this really my thought? Is this really, but I think that that's a very difficult thing to do. And especially when you're confronting things like your core beliefs, like religion, or even like your patriotism, or whatever you might want to call it. It's really difficult to entertain the idea, hey, I could have the complete wrong end of the stick here and don't even know it.
Yeah, we spoke a bit about it last week with Francisco on, and the amazing black leaders coming through now. The sad thing is, in the past, these ideas were there. You've had absolutely fantastic leaders in your country. I mean, Fred Hampton saw beyond the race issue and saw it as a class issue, was organised, and then gets killed. It's Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. These people rise up, and them ideas are dangerous to the status quo. So they've got to be removed. So what sort of democracy removes people sharing ideas, and I mean, especially with the Black Panthers setting up them sort of food programs for kids and education and stuff like that, and sort of self-sufficiency and raising people out of that, and sort of building a socialist community on small scale. That's dangerous to capitalism, and I'd say, to be honest, it's hard to call yourself a democratic country when those ideas are removed at the sort of root.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Martin Luther King, and I remember my uncle's best friend was a guy named John Criswell, and he was the secretary of the National Democratic Party during that time period. Well, for quite a long time, but certainly during the time that Martin Luther King was assassinated. And he used to come to our family dinners because he was a bachelor, and my uncle's best friend, and he would talk about stuff in Washington. And he said that when Martin Luther King was killed, that Johnson, came out and, spoke to the nation and tried to calm the waters and this and that. But he said he didn't want to do that. He said he hated Martin Luther King, and he said that he hated him because he was a communist. And just a little behind the scenes, that I got a glimpse of as a little girl living in the Bible Belt. Oh, Martin Luther King's a communist.
I think it's been identified that the three things that you need to have a democracy, you need in order to have a democracy that is educated enough to be able to make informed decisions and to be free to exercise their vote. They can't, there's not sort of armed threats at the polling stations, or there's no threat to your employment or your housing if you vote in a certain way. But then also that the electorate would be informed enough to be able to make those decisions. And I think the first one, you touched on at the beginning, where the education system is being meddled with, the banning of books, the banning of certain things off the curriculum. I actually bought a book that was banned off one of the lists that I'd never heard of. So in a sort of perverse way, they've managed to sell one more of them books. It's a book about the Holocaust, sort of told through cartoon form. But I think it was actually Albert Einstein who said about one day there will be the electorate that won't be informed enough to deliver us the governments that we need. And I think we're sort of in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and most of the Western democracies, to be fair, the concentration of the news outlets in television, in newspaper, the internet, and radio and everything is so concentrated, such a narrow sort of focused view of what's acceptable in politics, that it's impossible for people to have that informed decision anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds terrible, but I do believe there's a huge percentage of the general public that is, really ignorant. And maybe a large part of the blame for that is the media, especially the right-wing media, because they just don't cover things. I mean, I'm not saying that the left-wing media, such as it is here, covers every single thing. And I've caught them sort of not really twisting, but just sort of really pouring it on about something that if they would just state it clearly, that would be enough. But they, give their own opinions and all this and add emotion into it. And I don't think, that should be the case with the, with the news. I think that we should get information and lots of it. But yeah, people are in their little silos where they're only hearing certain things. And it's, you would think it is the uneducated or, people that are generally uneducated. But it's not just people that, didn't graduate high school, or it's uneducated in a way that, maybe they're college grads, but they've gotten themselves into this cocoon of news that they're only getting one point of view, and they don't even realize what they're missing. And I had a conversation not long ago with a friend who was, former law enforcement, former special forces, and he had never heard that Donald Trump had insulted the military, that he said he didn't want wounded soldiers in the parade because nobody wants to see that. That he, the one wounded soldier that sang Star Spangled Banner, he was an amputee and had a brain injury. And, as soon as the guy sang, Trump walked over to John Kelly, his chief of staff, and said, "Why did you bring him here? Don't ever bring him here again." And, it makes me look bad, he said. And the fact that he wouldn't go to the battlefield at Normandy because, for one thing, it was raining a little bit. He didn't want to get his hair messed up. And the other thing was, he said, "Why would I want to go and look at a bunch of losers?" He said, "They're dead." He said, "They got killed. They were losers." And he said that to his chief of staff, who had lost a son in the military, in a war.
Didn't he say something similar about, is it John McCain?
John McCain.
About being a prisoner?
He said he was really insulting John McCain like crazy. And whoever the interviewer was said, "But he's a war hero." He goes, "Is he a war hero? Oh, really?" He got caught. I like people that didn't get caught. Totally. Anyway, just ignoring all the facts. But so why are there so many guys really in the military that still back him? I don't get it. I in the rank and file, in the enlisted, among the enlisted, it's just it's insane. It's insane. It baffles the mind. But I know that we've got military leaders now that are really focused on tamping that down, identifying that right-wing extremism within the ranks, and doing, trying to do something about it, trying to, tag those people, stop them from spreading the stuff. But it's really gotten out of hand. I mean, it's like it's a runaway fire now. It's either going to have to just totally burn itself out, because I think that we've passed the point where we're going to be able to put it out. I think we're seeing that in Congress, because even amongst themselves, they're criticizing each other. It's like, the Democrats don't have to do anything in terms of criticizing them, because they're criticizing each other.
Do you think that plays into the problem, though? What we've got in, I mean, potentially across much of Europe as well. But you've got sort of the centre left thinking they don't have to do anything. We just have to say we're not as bad as those bunch over there. And that's leading us to not have anything to live in. That leads to problems down the line when you're not addressing people's problems and relying on the other party being a bit more bonkers than.
Yeah, absolutely true. But we do have some new voices in Congress that are just absolutely brilliant. Mostly young people that are being elected, newly elected people, and a lot of Black people that are really, really standing up and shining, and sort of sets them apart from the rest because of their willingness to speak out and their eloquence. And it's really heartwarming to see. And I'm putting a lot of hope in those young guys and girls to lead us out. I mean, I said, my 92-year-old mom, Southern white Bible Belt lady, grew up in the segregated South. Not long before she passed, she was, talking about this whole debacle with Trump and what a mess the country is going to be in. And she said to me one day, she said, "You know what? I think Black people are going to save us." And I went like, "Wow, Mom, all right." And, as time has gone by, because this was just a very few years ago, as time has gone by, it's like I see them emerging, coming out of the woodwork. It's like, wow, look at this, Jasmine Crockett. Oh my gosh. She's amazing. And she speaks out. She's smart. She's a lawyer. And I think she was a judge. She looks like a baby to me, but so does everyone. But she is so smart and so sharp. And she calls those guys out in real time when they're just lying. The other day, it was really interesting where there was a congressman, of course, from Florida, named Byron Donalds. And he made a big sign with this text that was between Hunter Biden and his uncle. And he read it off and he said, this is the uncle agreeing to, pass off information to Joe Biden in this business deal with Burisma and all this stuff. And, it's like everybody was like, "Oh, wow, that doesn't sound good," and everything. I mean, 15 minutes later, Jasmine Crockett gets up there and she says, "Okay, first of all, he's holding up something that appears to be a text message." He said, "But here's the actual text message that he, cherry picked from." They're not talking about Burisma. They're talking about Hunter Biden being behind on his alimony payments, and his uncle said, "I'll talk to your dad and see if I can get some help." Paints a whole different picture. And Jasmine Crockett said, "The only thing Joe Biden is guilty of is loving his son no matter what." And she said, "And I just hope and pray that my parents love me as much as he loves his son." And it was just like, man, boom. She hit it right away and she had the answers. They were so smart. And I don't doubt that, she has a team that was helping her, fact check and everything in real time. But they found that actual text, blew it up, submitted it for evidence. And this guy looked like a total fool. And he's sitting there looking all sheepish and smiling. And now he's running for speaker. That's the kind of guy. that's running for Speaker of the House.
Have the American population got much faith in these institutions now, do you think, Renee? Or do you think that's worn down over the last few years, sort of recent history? It's because that again can lead to a crisis democracy, and with such a divided country already, if people sort of lose faith in democratic institutions, that doesn't lead to good things.
Well, if they've lost faith in the elections, I mean, that's enough right there. If you can't have an election and accept the results and carry on with the work, then everything else is going to fall by the wayside. I mean, just that one thing. But I don't know. I really don't know what the answer is. I think the answer is to keep talking, and where you can, put in, your ideas. But we're really in crisis here. I suspect, it's similar across Western Europe, but not as chaotic and ridiculous.
Yeah, I think like George mentioned earlier, we've got the mechanisms in place to stop it, just everything grinding to a halt if there's a disagreement. It seems like you could probably do something similar over there.
Renee, do you see much hope coming out of the what we would call the trade unions, but the labour unions in the United States? Because I know that I think the film and television strike has gone on. It's now past its 100th day. The UAW have just voted to continue their strike for better pay. But it seems that there seems to be quite a few trade union leaders in the United States now that are willing to have a go. In previous times, it seemed to be very sluggish to react to the needs of the union members.
I sense something like that. That there's something different going on. That something has been sparked to life somehow. I don't think it's anywhere near, what it could be. But I think that I feel like it's going in the right direction. Knowing you two and James Martin, I kind of know more about Unite in the unions in England and the UK and in Europe. But I do sense a spark of life. To me, it kind of started with the Starbucks worker. Forgive me, I think you know his name, Sean. I can't remember it. The guy who was starting wanted to start a union at Starbucks, and he got fired and became an activist. Or was it Amazon?
Chris Smalls from Amazon, yeah.
Amazon. I'm so sorry. What was his name again? Sorry.
Christian Smalls.
Christian Smalls. Yeah. I got very excited about his work, and unfortunately, I should have checked up on it before this show, but I don't know what's going on at the moment with Amazon and with him. But, people like him, people like Sean Fain, the UAW leader, are saying, wait a minute, these guys are on it. So I don't know. And even the actors unions, I've seen them really be a lot more vocal and really hold the line like I haven't really seen before. So I believe there's an awakening. I think it would be great to, and probably there already is one, and I'm just not aware of it, but like a global community of workers who, like we're learning from what's going on in the UK or in Germany or wherever it is, a coalition more so that we can, and so that people, especially people in the United States, can be exposed to uh, different means of different ways of organization, different ways of activism, different ways to think, different views on things, because we're part of that, that cocoon, that silo here, just by virtue of our geography and the fact that most Americans don't travel internationally because it's expensive, and it's like I can't tell you the difference that it made to me once I was able to do some traveling. I wish I could have done it a lot younger, so that exposure to other cultures and the way other people think, and things that I would have thought shocking, and it was normal to them, and vice versa. But exchanging those ideas and how we got to where we are in our thinking, I think that's really important. I'd love to see that, more of an exchange, because I think that, to me, it appears that people in the UK and people in Western Europe are more quick to organize and to demonstrate and to protest and to do whatever needs to be done. I mean, they'll shut down the freeways, the motorways. Here, it's a little bit anemic, I would say, when we do our things here. It seems like there's more force behind the groups, in Europe. But I don't know that that's true, but that's just the way that it appears to me. And I think that, especially for those in the United States, if they had more reach, more interaction with people elsewhere, that it would be of huge benefit to them educationally and every other way.
Yeah, I mean, just on one of the points you've raised there, the unions do work internationally already. There's a number of global international trade union federations covering different sectors. But yeah, I
But
don't
how
know.
does that drain down to the workers? Does that?
Workers usually would sit on these international committees and meet, and I sat on a European wide one in my time back in a different life when I was a bus driver. But yeah, and I wouldn't discount the level of activism in the USA. Look back to Black Lives Matter. That was a mass mobilization across major cities across America and the world. I think it's there. And I do think, yeah, the trade union movement, especially in the USA, has been a bit of a sleeping giant that people forgot was there. And I think it's waking up, and we're seeing a whole new generation of people coming through who just aren't willing to play the game that they've been playing for generations there. Sort of since the 20s, 30s when they were smashed. It's kind of over now. The gloves are off, and these kids who probably come through for activism and stuff have come into leadership roles in the trade unions and just don't want to play by the old rules and are sort of, it's back to militant trade unions.
I think we're getting some good leadership, and people like Mick Lynch there and like Sean Fain over here, and it's heartening to see, these guys who just straight talks, truth to power. That it's very. I remember hearing Mick Lynch for the first time speaking to the press, and I was like, "Ooh," he was so blunt, that it was like you're not used to hearing people be that straightforward. But the more he talked, the more you were going, yeah. And I feel like that Sean Fain is sort of, whether consciously or not, or taking a page out of that book, and he reminds me very much of that Mick Lynch style when speaking to the press. He pulls no punches. He says it all.
I think the conditions have changed as well, sort of behind things that you know, the United States had a very well-to-do set of workers who were in sort of things like the automotive industry, the aerospace industry, where they were well-paid, skilled craftspeople. And I think now that's been sort of hollowed out to the point where the conditions behind it are showing that if they don't have a go, they're just going to, you know, meet their demise. They're not going to be able to pay their bills. They're going to be kicked out of their house. They're not going to be able to feed their families. I think the sort of the fat to trim, the belt to tighten is no longer tightenable, and it's resulting in this rise in, you know, people have to take things into their own destiny into their own hands now, don't they?
I guess that's the way it always is, isn't it? You know, you just, you know, finally get so much taken away that it's just untenable. It's unsustainable. You can't live. You can't feed your family. You can't house them. And, you know, like, I mean, French Revolution, you know, the people just finally say, we're hungry, you know, damn it. You know, why are we letting these few people tell us what to do? You know, we are legion, we are many, you know. And so I think that as long as we can be kept divided and stirred up against each other, that benefits whatever evil system there is out there to keep us all in our places.
I'm not even sure it's an evil system. I think it's just a system run by people who are looking after their best interests, and
that's evil.
Yeah, it can be. It can be.
I think it is. I mean, you know, we don't care about anybody.
If we had people like Sean Fain, though, and Chris Smalls in positions of leadership, they would be looking after their constituents' best interests, right. And that would be more likely to be us and working class people. That wouldn't be evil. It's exactly the same sort of premise.
Well, no, that wouldn't be evil. But I'm saying that we haven't had that.
Because your democracy is
a lot of people in, you know, in positions of power that are only in it for themselves. They're only in it to win the next election or the next appointment or whatever.
I mean, yeah, elections have become more about how much resource you've got rather than the sort of content of your character and your ideas and sort of ability to communicate those ideas and represent people. It's now just down to who's Axon throwing you the money, or you throwing your competitor the money.
Yeah,
I think up until quite recently, though, as well, it was sort of heavily regulated, heavily restricted on how you could put money into political parties. It was, you know, I think in the United States there were actually quite low, quite strict limits on it, and that's been sort of worn away. I'm not sure whether legislation has been changed or whether it's just been sort of court rulings on whether things the super PACs. Now, I'm not claiming to be an expert of what a super PAC is, but I basically understand it to be a mechanism to get round these restrictions on how much money you can pile into a political party. And obviously, we know why people want to pile money into political parties, especially, you know, sort of millionaires and billionaires who've spent their career being ruthless and amassing this money. They don't all of a sudden get a benevolent streak and want to hand it out to political parties for no reason, do they?
No, they don't. Yeah, it's a conundrum, the whole thing. But there is a movement or a bill or something. I don't know if it's in the House or the Senate to eliminate super PACs. being able to contribute to elections. I hope they can get that through somehow. I don't hold a lot of hope for it, but that would sure be great. And then put it on a more even course. I don't know. It's just disgusting what comes out of Congress these days. It's all performative, all for the cameras, all to draw attention to themselves as individuals. Because all they do is complain and call out other people. They don't do anything to forward any help or assistance for their constituencies. And I would think that those constituencies, would appreciate them doing their jobs, but they don't seem to notice. And maybe that goes back to, people not being educated, which goes back to people being isolated and only getting certain information. And pretty soon we're not even going to know our own history in this country. We don't know what it is.
It's back to that rampant individualism, isn't it? It's look after yourself and don't worry about the rest. And then, I'm not sure what turnout in a lot of states are in elections. Is it high turnout usually?
It's been a lot higher, honestly, since since the whole Trump thing came into being. I think people are scared into voting, which I'm glad they're voting, but they've been generally very high turnouts, and I think they'll be very high. The next presidential election. I don't see how he could be elected. I mean, it's insane. The man.
There have been many elections that we've forced the results are of saying recently, Renee. So I wouldn't.
Is he gonna rule because he wants to rule? Is he gonna rule from prison? I mean, I don't know. Will they actually put him in prison, or is he just too good to put in prison? It's like anybody else that had flaunted the judge's orders would be in jail already.
You've got a prison system in America, Renee, full with people.
Oh, let's don't even get started on that, because oh my God, yeah, it's terrible. Oh my goodness, we all need to work really hard to improve things, and just call them out, because I think the voices on the right, unfortunately, are very, very loud. And of course, that's part of the reason we decided to do this show. Absolutely. Is to add to those left voices that are trying to come up with solutions and trying to give comfort to those who feel like we do.
Yeah, and talking about those ideas that aren't allowed in the sort of mainstream stuff. I mean,
well, yeah, they're not allowed, or they're just avoided, for one reason or another. Mm-hmm. Those crazy loud guys on the right, very popular, very, very popular. And, when you're not willing to do that, when you're not willing to be a complete nutcase, no matter who it hurts, you have to be a little more consistent and wait a while for the word to get out.
Well, I know that we've spoken previously, Renee, about the parts of American history, American labor history, that don't get any airtime, it isn't talked about. But I think there's a rich vein of American struggle and labor history that just seems to be glossed over. The one that springs to mind is International Workers' Day, May Day, celebrated when it's celebrated because of the Haymarket massacre that happened in Chicago.
In the United States.
Happened in the United States. And the United States doesn't even celebrate International Workers' Day. It celebrates Labor Day separately. And the whole world celebrates International Workers' Day then because of something that happened in America. The Battle of Blair Mountain, I think it was called. Again, there was something like 20,000 trade unionists, miners, who were marching to another county that was a no union county to open it up, to bring their mines into the allow them to form a trade union. And armed stooges paid for by the mining company stopped them, and there was the first time that the United States, the first time that a bomb was dropped from a plane in the United States was in the Battle of Blair Mountain. Wow. And this stuff doesn't get talked about. This is a radical history in the United States, and it's just looked over.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, when you mention those things to me, it was embarrassing because I didn't know. And if I had heard about them, it was such a small item that it, didn't even register. I don't think we learned about those things in class. It just, it's like the Tulsa race massacre. I mean, that's my hometown, I never, ever heard of it until I was, oh my God, well, probably in my 40s. And someone else that I met, I was working on another story that I was working on a film on, and I was talking to this man, and he had made a documentary about the Tulsa Race Massacre, and I was blown away. I was astounded by it. And then the more, I looked into it, I couldn't believe that this had happened. Of course, it's only come out really publicly in the very last few years. But again, that was a case. Now, I don't know when that bomb was dropped that you're talking about, George, but I know they dropped some kind of incendiary devices from planes onto Black homes and businesses.
This was about the 20s, I think.
Yeah, I want to say the massacre was like 1919, 1920, something like that. Anyway, we'll figure that out and correct the record next time. But yeah, that it was really quite amazing.
Yeah, the Tulsa Race Massacre was 1921.
Yeah, 21. So it's amazing. What else is there that we don't know about? What else is there that we haven't been told? What is it that people know about us that we don't even know about ourselves?
And again, I think the McCarthyism and stuff like that has had a massive part to play in that. Any sort of radical ideas have just been squashed, and it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, people being informed and knowing of these ideas and these things happening. It's sort of, if the working class see that these things have happened in the past, they might have a blueprint to how to change things in the future. And we can't change. We've got to have status quo. But I think we've run out of time, Renee. So what's left?
Oh my goodness. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and join us again for another edition soon. And what's left? Well, I guess what we'll say today is that we are very much thinking of all those in the world, all people who are suffering and under threat of violence and danger. Our hearts are with you, and we wish peace to everyone. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.